Welcome to the Boldest You podcast. I'm your host, Carrie, and I'm thrilled to bring you real conversations with bold women and men. In this podcast, we dive deep into their stories, exploring what drives their courage, shapes their vision, and fuels their desire to leave a lasting impact. These are honest, vulnerable, and inspiring moments that celebrate what it means to be bold. Let's discover their legacies together. I'd like to introduce you to our bold woman of the hour, Kristin Taffe. Kristin Taffe is a newly promoted partner in the Transaction Advisory Services Group at Eide Bailly. She resides in rural Minnesota with her husband and 2 children. Kristin is active in her community as a JO volleyball coach and helped to create a youth theater program. She enjoys trivia nights, puzzle competitions, and takes costume parties incredibly seriously. And if you ever need a perfect espresso martini recipe, Kristin has fine-tuned hers to perfection. Welcome, Kristin. Let's get into it. Hi, Kristin. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
I am really pumped to be here. It has been my dream to be on a podcast ever since they became such like a normal part of our everyday life. And so thank you, Carrie, for finally giving me that opportunity.
I think you were the first person I talked about like years ago about starting a podcast. So the dream has come true for both of us.
It's our moment. This is just a really exciting day.
Yes, it is. Awesome. Well, like I said, I already told them who you are, so let's jump into it. I like to start off with the question, when have you had to be bold?
Well, this is such an interesting thing to think about because a lot of little things don't appear to be bold until you look back at your life and you're like, that was actually that was a big move. Like that was a hard thing to do. And like, let's recognize it for what it is. So I kind of put together like a little bit of a timeline of like, what was it like to be bold as, somebody, I work in accounting. And so like, even just professionally, where have been those moments? I would say the first one was having the guts to kind of go and say, hey, I really like this company and I want to stay here, but I don't see myself in this current job. And I think that Carrie is something you can relate to.
Absolutely, it is. As soon as you said it, I was like, oh, I remember that exact moment when I had to have that same conversation. And it feels like it's something so small in the moment, or not in the moment, it feels big. But when you look back at it, it's like, oh, but that was such a bold thing to have to do.
Yeah, like I look back at my career and I'm like, well, of course I had to make that change. But I also think back to that moment of being like, is this failure? First of all,
Mm,
will it be seen as failure by others? And like, what does this say about who I am? That like, could I just not cut it here? Or like, you know what I mean? Like, how do
yep.
I communicate my reasoning of saying that I really want to stay here, but I need to try something new because it's going to be better for me long term? So I would say that is something that, I mean, I was only a couple of years out of college, so I was in my early 20s. And I just remember that being one of the first crucial conversations I already have that looking back, I would call that pretty bold because it also would have been easy to just quit and say that wasn't for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, looking back on that moment, what were the things that came up for you that like prompted making that decision? Because I think a lot of us can relate. Like I said, I know I can, of being in that, you're questioning everything. And like you said, it's really easy to just be like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to move on to something different. But what were the things leading up to that decision that made you say, I think I need to try something different?
So I had been working in forensics, which for a lot of accountants is a kind of like a really interesting nuance, like, I kind of want to try that out. And at the time we had been doing some investigations and I was going with on my first, it was my first ever interrogation. And for me, it was supposed to be about building experience, seeing how it's done. And we get on site and the director that I was with was interrogating this person, and I mean they did the bad thing, right? And the individual is just crying and crying and like they have so much guilt, but they know they're in trouble, and it's like this whole thing. And we leave and my boss is just feeling like elated because for him that was a really good day at work. However,
Mm,
for me, I had been sitting in that back of the room kind of trying not to cry with them because I was just like, yes, this is the goal, but like in this moment, my empathy outweighs my ability to like do this job in the way that I would have to. And so I kind of realized if my goal is to be the person on the other side of this table that is able to ask these hard questions and really kind of keep pushing when it's really uncomfortable, I don't know if that's me. And in that moment, it wasn't. Could I have grown into it? Maybe. But as a young person in my 20s, it wasn't really, it didn't seem possible. And
yeah.
it really came down to, okay, well, I'm still an accountant and I have my CPA. So what do I want to do? I'm in the Fargo Moorhead community. I loved being at Ed Bailey. I
Mm,
obviously still do. I'm still here. And that was one thing where I was like, but I'm not ready to leave. Like, this isn't it for me, but I'm not ready to leave this place. And so then it really became kind of kind of a look around and see, what career do you want? And that was how I ended up where I currently am. And it really was having to go in and say, I can't do this, but could I work for you? And that's a really awkward, hard thing to ask. And, you take whoever you're asking, you're taking them very unaware. And what do you do first? Do you talk to the person that you want to leave their department or the person you want to come into theirs? It's very nuanced altogether. So I would say that it was a lot of like searching for, what kind of career do I think I would really like to have, and looking around and seeing what skill sets I think I would be great at.
I love that. I love the concept of thinking about like what's someone's good day at work versus your good day at work. And I think even in my role with people on my team, like a good day at work for me is something where I get to do something like this, or I get to plan and program and create an event. And I have someone on my team, a good day at work for her would be looking at data and Excel spreadsheets and processes.
Yeah,
And I'm like, oh, our good days at work are very different. And thankfully we can balance each other. But that's a great concept of, if someone isn't loving what they're doing, like what does a good day at work look like for you? And then what you said about having to have that conversation. Yeah, that can be terrifying of, where do I start? How do I have this conversation with someone and ask them, will you essentially hire me onto your team because I think I could enjoy doing what you do? And going to your current director or boss and saying, it's not a you thing, it's a me thing. Like, I
yeah,
remember that conversation when I switched from accounting to HR, and it was like, there's nothing against you, the job, any of that. Like, this is just personally not something
it's
that I can do for the rest of my life.
absolutely like that reevaluation of like, what I thought I'd really crush it at is actually not my best skill set.
Yes. Yeah, and
So
it's a little bit of an identity crisis too, where you think you've planned this whole career out, you think that this is what you're going to do forever, and then you have that pivotal moment that makes you go, "Uh-oh. Nope, everything I thought I knew is not true, and where do I go from here?" Okay, so you had that conversation, you switched your career. So walk us through then switching. Like, what was that experience like to go from, yeah, what you thought you were going to do forever to then a new, which you said you love, which is
yeah,
great.
yep.
Um, but what was that process like? Like, what sort of like soul searching did you have to do, or what did you learn through that experience?
Well, I was fortunate enough to be able to do, in a sense, like I tried out a few different departments at Ide Bailey before I really settled in where I was. So I did an audit busy season. I had already assisted with some valuation work, which is essentially where I ended up. But to really gain the idea of like what interests me most, and that was very helpful, just to be like, this is the direction I think I want to go, and I'm super thankful that I did. It was
Mhm.
interesting though, because then, I mean, 2 years later, my career took another big turn. And then looking back, it was kind of the same thing, where what at the time feels like a crucial conversation, right? Like, this is really hard. I don't know how I'm going to address this. Then instead becomes a moment to be bold. So in 2013-ish, my husband decided that he was ready to farm, which his family farm
Mm,
is in the Fargo Moorhead area. And so at that point, it was one of those situations where it was like, okay, well, you need to then move your career to the small community that the farm is in, 2 hours away from the office. However, I'm not ready to leave my job. And so what does that look like? There isn't really opportunities like there are at Ide Bailey in the area that we're moving to. But what is compromise? How do we see that compromise working out? And at at that moment, then I went to my boss, and I mean, this is the first time I think I've ever cried in the office, but pretty much was just like, we're moving and
mhm,
I really like my job. Could I work remotely? And
mm.
I mean, in 2013, there weren't a lot of people that were asking that. And I
No,
didn't,
that was before it was cool. Like, people
yeah.
did not do it at that point.
And I mean, even like as a firm, we were set up to have remote employees, in the sense of like our audit teams are constantly on site, but we weren't necessarily set up right away for people who were fully remote. Like, you still had to
Mhm.
have your computer updated in the office whenever something new rolled out. You still had to, you know what I mean? Like, it
Yeah.
wasn't the status that COVID pushed everybody to. And I just remember in that situation between me and my husband being like, this seems like if you want to try farming, I'm not willing to give up this career. And so if
Mm,
this solution doesn't work, we're going to have to really like reevaluate whether what essentially what we're going to do. Um, so same thing, went into my boss's office and I through tears said, I really like my job. I don't want to leave, but can I do this? And I'm just so thankful because although I had 5 years at Eide Bailly by that point, that's still I'm still somebody in their early 20s doing something that not a lot of people within our firm footprint had done yet. And so that was
yes.
a lot of trust I was lucky enough to have bestowed on me at that point.
Yes, and I think there's so many things in what you just mentioned that are coming to mind for me. One of which, I mean, yes, trust is huge, and I think at any place that you work, doing whatever you can to build that trust with your team, your leader is going to make just everything so much better when you know that they're a safe space to go and talk to you about the hard stuff because I tell my team all the time, like, life doesn't go away when we're at work. Like,
Yeah,
the things outside of work are still happening. And it would be completely ignorant of me to think that someone can show up to work and only think about work. It would be great if our brains worked that way, but that's just not realistic. And so when you are dealing with those life things, to be able to go into your director's office and to have that conversation through tears, which we have all been there. We've all had the moments where we've cried at the office. It really just shows that that relationship that you spent the time building, like, was really trusting and supporting, and that they wanted your best interest. Of course, they didn't want to lose someone great, and they were willing to try something that, yeah, wasn't super status quo at the time. And the other thing that was coming to mind too is you mentioned you and your husband having to make that decision of, I think, yeah, people, when we think about our careers, right? Like, maybe it's a little bit easier to think of bold moments when it comes to our career because it's, I applied to a new job or
yeah,
I switched
it has a
jobs. And so those, yes, like, those feel like bold moments. But I think when you mentioned the having to have that conversation with your husband, like, that's another example of a bold conversation of, in a partnership together, like, okay,
yeah,
we have to figure out what this means for us as a couple. And moving from Fargo, which is a relatively big city for the Midwest, to a small town, which is very different, not access to the things that you're used to, building an
absolutely.
entirely new community. I mean, when I moved 30 minutes outside of Fargo, went through a little bit of a crisis of, my community is not the same. The people that I would go to happy hour with after work are not the same anymore. And so, yeah, I would just love to hear, you got the yes, which was great, but I'm sure that there was
It
some
was hard. Like,
experiences that you went through moving and what that was
yeah.
like for you.
I agree that like looking back, not only I mean you're pretty young to be having those conversations because I mean they're very pivotal. Are we leaving Fargo? Are we selling this house that we literally just bought? Are we
Hmm.
all of those things are coming to the surface very quickly. And then we move back to, a smaller community. And luckily, I have family that are 30 minutes away. Thank goodness. Because the thing about it is, like, I had only been in my professional career for 5 years, but then I had 4 years of
Hmm.
college before that. And so, like, I had kind of been away for almost 10 years. Your friendships change, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not like you just get to slide back easily into a friendship group or anything like that, even if you are from a nearby community. You've all changed
Hmm.
as people. Some people have kids, some people don't, some people are career oriented, some people are currently just raising a family, and you know what I mean, like it's so different. And that was so hard for me. That was something that I wasn't expecting because I've always been pretty outgoing, and so it was kind of on the back burner. I didn't even think about
Yeah.
it as being a potential issue. I was like, I'll be lonely at work, but that wasn't really a question mark. But you're exactly right. Like when I lived in Fargo, we had a group of friends that every Friday we met at the same bar at 5 p.m. for drinks
Mm.
every Friday. And
Yep.
like losing that sense of community is really hard. And then
Yep.
it takes so long to build it back up. And so just in thinking about the first year we were here, I also didn't have a concept of what it meant to be a farmer. I didn't realize that like my husband would be working 7 a.m. until midnight and then 7 a.m. until midnight. And like I would be by myself. And so like that
Yeah.
first year was really hard to go from being in the office every day and with my friends and have, friends in the office, friends in events at home on weekends, whatever we're doing, to then instead being alone a lot of the time.
Yeah,
And
it's almost like you experienced what the world experienced during COVID before everyone experienced it. Like,
Well, and without the capabilities of video,
yeah,
like,
true.
I can't explain to you how lonely it was to only ever have phone calls, and, like, I would call somebody like you, and I'd be like, "How are you doing? Let's talk about whatever." But Carrie, you've already gotten those same conversations from the people you're in the office with,
Yeah.
and, like, you've already been able to have that, so you're more like in that situation, you obviously, "Now let's get down to business," and I'm just like, "I'm looking for any personal connection though, please." And so it was
Yeah.
hard, but it did make me also realize the investment you have to make in order to sustain relationships.
It's
And I
so
think that
true.
I think that's a really important skill set, and I just had to learn it and to say like, okay, well, if you want to stay relevant, if you want to stay close with these people, if you want to do all of these different things, then you just have to put in a lot more work.
Yeah, it's that like redefining what friendship really means or what community means to someone. And I was thinking about that this morning. I was actually talking with a group of women about it. And similarly, yeah. And when I moved outside of Fargo, it was just after COVID. So I again maybe had a little bit of a sneak peek into some of that. But it does like, and it's this feeling of I've had many moments where I'll be at home because my husband's not a farmer, but he is a coach of multiple sports and teaches. So is working those long days and is gone many nights of the week. And there's been so many moments where I've felt like I'm so lonely. Like I don't have people around me. And yeah, I go for a walk after work. And I mean, in my role, I do work remotely now and talk to people all day. But like you said, sometimes that you're not getting that same fulfilling conversation that you would get when you would see people in the office or you would go to happy hour after work. And I've
Right.
really had to challenge my thinking of like, okay, yes, you might be feeling lonely. Have you done X, Y, and Z? Have you reached out to someone? Have you scheduled time with someone recently? And understanding that I think your true friendships, those people that are always going to be in your corner, are also wanting you to do those things. Like they
Yes,
still want to see you. They
absolutely.
still want to, even if you're 2 hours out of Fargo, when you come into town, like they're going to make it a priority to see you and connect with you. And we get in our heads so much, I think, of again, like I'm in a different place. I don't have my same community, like the negativity, and I know I'm one of the worst people when it comes to some of that negativity. But it when you take a step back, like yeah, it's just a little bit of redefining and recognizing like, wow, I did never realized how convenient friendship could be when you're in the same area. Like when you're all together, when you think back to college, you're just constantly surrounded by people. So those things come really naturally. But as you get older and life circumstances change, it is an effort you have to put in to maintain relationships.
I also think it's so interesting because what I have definitely learned is that you can sustain relationships through like so many easier means of communications like Snapchat or sending
Yeah.
memes or not memes but like posts on Instagram, whatever it might be, but all those relationships are already built. They can
Mm,
sustain that way, but and so that makes it harder too because then you're moving, you and I both understand, moving to a different place where you're like I it's not just about the other relationships I already have, it's about starting fresh with some of these different ones.
yes. And that's hard. I
It's
remember going through that where yeah, I like you said you were, always an outgoing person and I would have said the same thing about myself, but then you get put in these circumstances where you don't know people and you really have to come to terms with how outgoing am I? Like, am I going to be the person who goes and talks to people I don't know? Am I going to be the person who, when we moved to this community, my husband had community here because of teaching in this school district. I didn't know those same people, and there'd be moments where he'd get pulled away to something, and I'd be like, "Uh-oh, I don't know who to talk to
yeah.
now." And having to, that's a bold moment, right? Of
Yeah.
recognizing, okay, I have to be the one to start the
One look around
conversation,
this
or
room and yep, see who's my
yeah,
safe space. That yep.
exactly. Yeah, we just don't think of those things super often, and even the most outgoing people, I'm sure, still walk into a room and get nervous when they don't know people there
100.
and who to talk to or all those things.
It's like even just to pivot off that, one thing that I thought about in terms of like being bold is that relationship building. So as an example, my daughter switched dance studios this year and she was really
Oh,
nervous about it, not from the dance perspective, but starting relationships over,
yep.
right? Like to just go in and having to make new friends with people who've been doing this together for a long time, maybe go to school together. She would just be, an outsider in all of those ways. And the girls have been great and very welcoming, which is wonderful and warming to my heart. But it was one of those things too where I was like, well, I have to do my part then because her life will be made easier if
Mm.
I'm not an outsider with the rest of the parents. Like, and they also have been really like kind and welcoming, but it's still really hard to go over and be brave and be like introducing yourself and really trying to contribute to conversations, but not too much. You know what I mean? Like trying to measure, like,
Yeah.
how do I do this when I know like we both need this? But it's just hard, and it's very much like you have to put some effort into it. It doesn't just
Mhm.
always, things will happen naturally, yes, but they happen naturally because somebody pushes it. Like if
Yes.
something's happening naturally for you, it's because somebody else put the effort out there.
Yep.
And so sometimes it's just accepting, like, it has to be my effort. This natural friendship will evolve because I made myself uncomfortable for a few minutes.
That is so true. And as you were saying that, what I was thinking of is all the people that I would consider like my closest friends, like something had to happen for us to
Yeah,
get to where we are now. And it sounds so silly. Like, yeah, I remember with one of my best friends, like we worked at the same place in college and we were chatting one night and I was like, this is weird, but like I think we should exchange phone numbers because we should probably like hang out. It's
bold
like
moment, right?
yeah,
Like,
and now we're like still best friends, but yeah, to think about the fact that that didn't just happen. Like something had to you had to do an action to get to where we are now. And with any new friendship, that's the same thing. Like it, but for some reason, I'm probably more in my head about it now than I was at that point. Maybe I'm
right.
older and have gotten a little smarter, and so I don't, but
You
it's
just like realize, like, oh, this is a little bit more uncomfortable than I
yes.
remember.
Exactly. And sometimes I think it's circumstances, right? Like I said, with that friend, it was we worked at the same place, and I think there's friendships that I've made at Eide Bailly that it's because I work here that naturally we've been able to form friendships. And what you were saying with your daughter is, yeah, a couple minutes of uncomfortableness could create a really beautiful friendship because you guys are in the same circumstances. You both have daughters at this dance studio, and you're probably going to
I,
see each other quite a bit. And it's nice the second or third time to have that familiar face. I know when I've gone into places, it's like, okay, like it's awkward the first or second time, but then after that, you start to see the people and you have things to talk about, and it makes it a little bit easier in the long run. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, wow, like, how did we get to where we are? Like, now we
yeah,
have a friendship established.
exactly, exactly. So when I was thinking of times I've had to be bold, I would say that I mean, having to make new friends is a big one. It's so uncomfortable. Even
Yeah.
if you're going, it's hard. So definitely
Yes.
that one.
I agree. And so, as you were talking about moving to a smaller community, I think, again, people out listening may be in Fargo, they might be outside of Fargo. Maybe some people have stayed in the same place their entire life, or people have moved like yourself. And you mentioned community, and I think community can be more than just friendships. Like that's our natural, right? Our family and our friends. But in your intro, you mentioned like being a JO volleyball coach and creating a theater program. So tell me more about those things that you've done to build community for you and your children.
Absolutely. So like just thinking about the theater program, that was something that I was always passionate about in elementary and high school. Just we had a lot of opportunity in the high school that I went to, and I valued it so much. And honestly, like I just think you get so many skills out of working with like a theater department. The idea of if
Hmm.
you're on stage, you get the chance to just like kind of get over some of the shyness that you might feel in your everyday life through this experience where you get to be a different person, right? Like, and I think that that just really allows you to grow a lot, and I think it's so important. And I our school is really small. Like my daughter's grade has 27 kids in it, and it's one of the biggest grades in the K through
Yep.
12. And so it's a tiny school, and that's just not something that's feasible. And
Hmm.
so they had a community, or I'm sorry, a theater program maybe 10 years back, and it just kind of fizzled out as attendance went down and I'm sure participation dwindled. But it's something that I've always been passionate about. And I had mentioned it to a teacher that's also my friend at the school. She's a third grade teacher. And just like, hey, we should, there's still a stage here. Like, if you ever decide to get something moving, like, I'd be interested. And a couple months later, she came back and she was like, were you serious about that? And I was like, absolutely, I was serious about that. And the first year, it was her kind of leading as an overall director. She is the person with experience with kids. She's the person who knows all of them. She knows what it's like to work in a school system. So she's like leading the whole program. I directed the onstage, and then another one of my good friends did all of the backstage work. And then we had some other volunteers that helped in very specific areas, costuming, running lines, that kind of thing. The very first year we opened it third through fifth graders, and I think we had like 40 kids that attended, which when we're talking about a very small school, that is probably the most participated program in our
Yeah, my eyes went up. I'm like, that's huge for a
That's
small school.
amazing. Yeah, like you don't get that many kids playing any singular sport. You don't get that many kids
Mm-mm.
doing any sort of, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to get that many people interested, and it's because it number one, it was a shorter program. It only lasted 2 weeks, so it's a little bit easier for parents to make that commitment with their children. Recognize that obviously, but also it provided the idea of like, okay, well, you don't want to be on stage. That's just fine. Would you like to try working backstage? Maybe you would be really good at like the sound booth and just finding different ways that kids can use different skill sets. The first year came and we did a great job, but it was definitely a learning experience for all of us. The second year, the teacher that we're working with found a great grant, and we spent hours putting in our grant application, and we won the grant.
Oh my gosh,
And I
congratulations.
know,
That's
like,
huge.
it was huge. And really what it allowed us to do was to buy the things for a program that has no funding that we can
Mm,
use going forward. Like now we have a spotlight, now we have, our own microphones and like all of those things that we will be able to use for the next 10 years. We were able to buy in 1 year because we put a lot of time and effort into it, but like it makes a really big difference. That's the difference between something being able to carry on um, and not really, because
yeah.
you can't fundraise a program to infinity is really what it comes down to. Like there has to be more to it than that. And so that was huge. And last year then we opened it up one more grade. We ended up going third through sixth graders. We ended up with I think 52 kids, which is a lot. We needed more parent volunteers then, that is for sure. But like even our production quality in 1 year, we had already learned so much more about how you can best utilize talents, how to best help kids understand like different cues on stage and remember them. And it's been so great. We're already looking at it for this year now, and we just know there's always going to be so much interest, and it comes from so many different kids where you can tell that this is such a great outlet for them. Like somebody who really isn't great at sports, this is a great moment to shine. Or somebody is mixing with different kids than they normally hang out with during the school day.
Mm,
And it's awesome to see that the grades are all mixed together. And it's just been really cool to see that come together. And I think what's most impressive is like how much our community cares.
yeah.
So we each year have only done like one performance. And when I say packed house, I mean not an empty seat. We are putting, like everybody is coming, and it's everybody and their cousins and their grandparents and people from two towns over that are friends with them. Like the amount of people that care and that have made donations to help it be successful. And like the lumber yard has been donating the materials for the set building, and the grocery
Wow.
store is donating snacks every day. Like people care and they really want you to be successful. And I think that's something that I have just taken away from this is like, if somebody will put out the effort to do something, other
Mm.
people will be so supportive. You just need to have somebody that will lead it. And honestly, like I'm the right person for that because I care a lot. Like I'm really passionate about it, and I love reading scripts in my spare time and being like, yeah, I think we could do this one, or no, that one is a little bit too advanced for a group of, 10-year-olds.
Oh, that's so interesting to hear about and learn about. And as you were talking, just the bold moment of, yeah, just having that conversation
Mhm.
to say, hey, if you think we can make this happen, like count me
Oh,
in. And
yeah,
for that teacher to also say, yeah, let's do it. And
exactly.
just it's such a good example of how something that seems small. I mean, maybe when you volunteered yourself, it probably didn't feel small because you're like, we have to build a program, but something as small as having that conversation has now led to creating community for your entire town. And for
Yeah,
those kids, I mean, I just think of how many of them are having to be bold to go on stage or to
it's
learn a
amazing.
soundboard and lights and things that
Yes.
they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do and explore different things. And I think that's so important in a small town, especially. I mean, I grew up in small towns, and the
Yep.
more that you can do to get
We
them
have
just interacting with each other and trying different things, and the fact that, yeah, you guys are all so supportive of them exploring and learning these things. And I think the other part of it that what you were saying made me think of is that we don't have to be the experts in things that we want to try, right? Like you didn't go to theater school unless you did, and I'm wrong. So
yeah, I
correct
did.
me if I'm wrong. I mean, I know you're an accountant, but
Yeah.
you had that background from being a part of it, but it's not like you're this
Yeah.
expert in theater, but you said, "Hey, I'm willing to learn. Do you want to learn alongside of me?" And I think that's just such a great example of how many things we don't pursue because we're afraid to not know. Like, I know that I am someone that I want to know everything about what I am doing. Like, I want to be that expert. It's the perfectionist in me and working on that. But there's probably a lot of things that it's like if I didn't have that fear, what would I put myself out for? What would I do? And just the fact that you were willing to say like we can figure this out. Like we've got the resources, we've got the talents, and to just dive into it is incredible.
Well, and even on that note, it's funny because you kind of hit on something that was really, it came up during the grant writing process. They were asking who is going to lead this and what's their background and how are they the right fit for this. And that is kind of humbling when you're just like,
Yeah.
in a way, I'm the person who raised my hand. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that I can do all these great things, but I am passionate about it. I care about it.
Yeah.
I do at least understand some aspects of it. Yeah, like I'm sure we could try and find somebody different. Are they going to want to do this? Do they live locally? Are they interested
Mhm.
in it all? The answer is probably no. And if they, you know what I mean? And also, like, if there is that person that listens to this and you live in my community, then you're welcome. Like, come on in. You know, but it was one of those things where, like, as we were going through it, there was a few of us and we all had to kind of submit a bio. And one of the others was like, I don't really have any professional, like, I don't have anything to write for
Yeah.
this. And it was the rest of us being like, are you kidding me? Like, you're so good at this and you're great at this. And like, that is experience in itself. It might not
Yep.
tie exactly in terms of like job title, or it might not tie
Yep.
exactly in terms of like educational experience, but this is why you're going to do great in this role. And I think
Mhm.
that sometimes like that's something that it is hard to be like, should we still pursue it? Because there's still, I mean, in that situation, the risk is you put in a lot of work and you don't get the grant, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, so I mean, it's not like the risk is time loss. It's not like how in other things there's a higher, something
Yes.
on the line, but it did still have to be like, no, we are great at this and we'll do a good job, and we definitely did.
And I think sometimes passion goes so far. Like if
Yeah.
you are passionate about something and can speak to it and demonstrate like why you're so passionate about it, that might take you further than skill alone because someone that has that skill might not have the same passion. Like, yeah, there's things that I'm good at, but they don't bring me joy and excitement. I'm good at grocery planning, but that doesn't mean I love to do it, right?
Right,
And
right.
so having the skills doesn't always equate to being passionate about something, but when you can be passionate about something, it's going to show up in the way that you do things. And I think of like the teacher that you mentioned, like the fact that she knows how to work with kids. Like you don't work with kids every
I
day.
work with
I
kids.
don't work with kids every day. Like I would not be the best person to tell you how to get a group of kids to do something. Like that
Or
would
teaching
not
them
be
to stop talking and not just
exactly.
like,
Yes.
there's so much that goes into that where you're just like,
Yep.
thank goodness that
Yes.
we needed that skill set to oversee everything. I can do this over here, and
Yep.
the other girl can do this, and she's teaching them how to make sounds and record them on an iPad. But what we still needed was an actual person to bring everybody together, common goal setting,
Mhm.
all of that. So
Yes, and that's so important. And like you said, the imposter syndrome gets the best of all of us when we think, oh, I don't have the right skills. And when you actually sit down and start to think about all the things that you do in a day, whether it's work related or even just being a mom or being a
yep,
parent and all those other experiences, there's skills in all of those things that we do. And it doesn't, like you said, the job titles don't have to align perfectly
right.
or the yeah, I've never ran a theater program before, but here's all the things I can offer to help with it. And you mentioned parent volunteers, and I'm sure most of them had never been involved in a theater
Right.
program before, but they raised their hand, they were willing to say yes. And I think people recognize that passion in people and get excited about it, right? I'm sure all of you leading that program, your excitement is a big part of why that program is still happening. It's
Yeah,
getting the students
absolutely.
excited about something and that's kind of a role model situation, right? I think back to when I was a kid of the things that you would see and go, oh, that looks really fun, or that person's really excited about it. It's like, I want to try that. And so just all of you bringing your energies to it, I'm sure is creating such a positive experience for those students. And that is a ripple effect. They are going to take that into junior high, high school. Maybe they'll be running a theater program
That's
someday. You
right.
never know. It's so fun to see what that ripple effect can be like.
It's been so great too. I mean, we've only done 2 years now, but to even just see like people come back the next year and say, this is what I want, like I want to help with this year, or I think I could do really great at whatever. I mean, they clearly have seen something else happen and they're like, oh yeah, I can see how I can build off of what I did last year too. And so that's been pretty cool.
Yes, and it's just giving them those life skills. Like I volunteer with Bio Girls, and I know you and I've chatted a little bit about that program, and it's similar. I love seeing them come back year after year, and they come back with just a little bit more confidence that next time. They're like, "Okay, I've done this. I can do it again, and I can try something different, or I can put myself out there in a different way than I have before." And those are such valuable life skills because they're going to get to where they're in their early 20s and having to make that ask or that crucial conversation, and they're going to remember back like, okay, I've done something hard before, I can do this again. And so it's just what the work that you all are doing in your community is so important, and I know people in your community see that and appreciate the effort that you all are
Right.
putting into making that opportunity for all the kids in the community.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
been pretty awesome. I think even just what you said about Bio Girls. So I coach volleyball right now, and I will just tell you, like, I love volleyball. I'm not that athletic. Like, I'm not like
Yeah.
but I will put a ton of work into making sure that I am doing drills that are applicable, that every time we're getting better and somebody's learning a new skill set, and that I can understand how this person is experiencing this issue with their serve, but somebody else is doing something different. And how can we work with both of you? And I think that part of it too, even with that, like I know I'm not the best volleyball player in this area, but I am somebody who just like cares a lot. And
Yep.
so that was something too where I was just very much like, hey, I want to raise my hand to help with this. And like if there's a need, I'm here because I am passionate about it. I'm also passionate about other kids wanting to play and
Yeah.
wanting to like get that first level of interest because everybody should at least have exposure. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like in a
Yep.
small town, we don't have a ton of different sports. We don't have a ton of opportunities to do, there's just not as many after school activities. And so
Mm.
it would be great if people had the chance to at least try it out. And to do that, you need coaches and you need people who care about building the program. And I was luckily able to step into a really good program and just, they said, here's the information. You work on coaching this team. Here are your goals. And that's been a really
Mm.
awesome opportunity too.
And I think that relatability of, like you said, you're not telling everyone, "Hey, I'm the best person to,
Oh,
to demonstrate this or to do this," but I care and I'm here and I'm showing up. And yeah, I think about that for Bio Girls. Part of the program that I am a part of is training for a 5K, and I I run. I would not say I'm a runner. I always make that clarification.
yeah.
And it's fun when you're chatting with the girls, because part of every session that we do it is a run, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't do this." And it's like, "Hey, like, I'm not super athletic either, but yep, we can do this. Like we can work on this together, and I'm here to support you and to just encourage you through this, and just to see their confidence build because they know that someone cares about them. They know that someone is there to be with it. And I always tell them, like, yeah, it might not feel good right now, but we're going to feel good when we get back. Or
Yeah.
at the end of a game of like, hey, or at the end of a practice, like, what skill did you learn today? What are you taking away? And just, I think kids can really tell when people care. I think any human can tell when someone cares, and that just makes such a difference in someone's experience.
Yeah,
Mm.
definitely.
Okay, well, you've mentioned a lot of different things: volleyball coach, youth theater program, your career, your kids. So, what I'm curious about is, what do you do for you? Like, what are the things that fill your cup and take care of yourself? Because, yeah, you have committed to a lot of things, and many, many people can relate to having a lot of things on our brains and our lists, that bring us joy. But also,
Yeah.
like, what are the things that like really help you feel centered and grounded?
This is gonna sound kind of lazy, but like I just like to sit. Like I am a big reader.
Mm,
Usually nothing of consequence because I'm not here to get more stressed out in my reading time. And
yep,
so like I read a lot of romances or, like watch the Great British Bake Off, like that
yep.
kind of thing. I do enjoy like when I go out with my friends, I love trivia night, puzzle competitions, all of those types of things as well. But yeah, I would say that I've yet to make working out a passion as a way to refill my own cup. So hopefully that'll happen soon. That would be really great. Crossing my fingers. But
Hey, we are training our brains when we read. That's what I tell myself. Is that like I am exercising my brain right now, and that's good for me.
yeah, like my vocabulary, so strong. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So,
Yep, the creativity, the mindset. Yep, I see it.
yeah.
And those are all great things. And I think one question I'm curious about, and I'm sure people who have kids listening would also be curious, because I don't have kids, obviously. Um, how has some of that changed? Or maybe how do you build that time when you obviously were in a place at one point in life where you didn't have that commitment of having kids and now you do have that? And I'm sure that adds just a layer of time commitment, like that you have more things that you have to give yourself to. And so how has that changed through that life experiences of having kids and how have you still made it a priority?
Um, I really wish I had great insights here, but I would say I'm one of those people that tends to utilize the time after my children go to bed until way too late at night for myself. And I feel like you see that. You'll see it on like the internet or something, and about how it's about people do that and they stay up way too late because it's the only time where you can like take your time back. It's a
Yeah.
time that's just made for you. Um, so I definitely participate in that in a non, I'm sure it creates some lack of success somewhere else in my life. But the other thing that I have noticed is that who you are just always is evolving, right? And so I
Hmm.
remember telling one of my coworkers who has kids that are a little bit older than me, a few years ago, I remember telling her, I can't imagine spending my whole Saturday watching a basketball tournament. Like, oh, I can't even put myself in those shoes. I want to just be at home and like drinking my coffee, watching TV, doing whatever. And she was just like, no, I really like it. And now I'm kind of at that point where like, I really like it too. And
Yeah.
so it's an interesting combination of like sometimes your me time actually overlaps. Like, so as an
Hmm.
example, last weekend, my son had basketball for an hour. And I watched him play, and he was so happy that I was there to watch him. But at the same time, I was talking to two friends who were also watching their children. And so,
Hmm.
like, that was a great hour. I got so much out of that hour. And so, I think that part of it too is just like how you value your time just changes organically. And so, it's less of a stressor. Like, if I were to go back in time, I feel like I would have been nervous about that before becoming a parent. Like, when am I ever going to be able to do this and that? But I do think that it just changes. Do we still have to prioritize like taking time away? Absolutely. And that is harder. Like, there was my kids are now almost 11 and almost 7. And so they're old enough where they can do more things on their own, and leaving them somewhere isn't a big deal. But I remember there was a point where my husband and I like didn't do anything together for like a year because it was hard to find. We live in
Hmm.
the middle of nowhere, so to get a babysitter there we have to drive somebody, like you have to go and pick them up and then you have to bring them back to your house, and like it's this whole big production. Sometimes it's just easier that I'll go to you with my friends, and so that, you
Hmm.
know what I mean? And so then like you're putting your relationship on the back burner, and it's instead of like valuing your time with your like it's a changing goal all the time, but I also think like who we are changes too, and makes some of those things just ebb and flow a little bit more naturally.
Yes, I love that. And I think the some of those core values that are important to us maybe don't change, and sometimes they do.
Yeah.
When I look back 10 years ago, the things that I maybe valued are probably different than now. And I think there's maybe a few overarching themes in my values that have stayed the same, but the actual implementation of those values has changed a lot. And I maybe went the opposite way of you said, like your life got busier, and not that my life didn't get busier. People regularly tell me that I have too many things going on, but it's the way that I spent it, right? When I was newly in my career and I lived in Fargo and I was around a bunch of people all the time. Like I had something going on every single night and I loved it and I was involved in all these different things. And I think gradually over time just started to recognize like, no, I really value more of that at home time or the really like good life-giving conversations versus just a passing conversation. Like I want
Absolutely.
to go to dinner, I want to have multiple, just yeah, like deep conversations and that are more about the life stuff than and yeah, and I love what you said about the integration of that you can be there for your kids and you can go watch that basketball game, which I'm sure you're such a proud mom when you're watching them do something that they're happy about, but also getting to fulfill your cup with those conversations and putting yourself out there again, like, oh, I'm not just gonna go sit here and watch it, but I'm gonna have this conversation and I'm gonna talk to my friends and I'm gonna make this something really special. I think that's so important that two things can exist at the same time. It doesn't have to be
Absolutely.
everything perfectly in its own little box as much as my brain would like it to be that way. It can be this, melting pot of all the things mixed together, and that you don't necessarily have to give things up. I think that's really important for people to hear. And granted, again, that's from me saying that without kids, but it's really reassuring coming from you to say like, no, you don't have to. It might look different at different stages of life, but that you figure it out, and everyone navigates that on their own. And depending on what season of life you're in, things are going to look different, and you get to choose what you prioritize, and make that work for you. So I really love that thought process.
That's Carrie, you got it exactly right. And even on that, so like my daughter's switching dance studios. We have now a 45-minute drive once a week to get her to
Hmm.
this new dance studio. And so like right away it's that thinking of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be spending so much time in the car. What a waste of time, whatever. We talk all the time. Like
Yeah,
it's okay that we're in the car with each other. And I think like especially as she gets a little older, I might value that even more and more.
for
And
sure.
also like then on those nights I sit there and I wait for her, and sometimes it's a really great opportunity to just catch up on my email. I
Hmm.
have time. It's for the most part after other people are working. I'm just sitting there with my laptop. I can get a lot done. And then there's other times where if I'm not as busy, I might just read or listen to a podcast, and like that's decent time as well. Like that's actually time that I don't mind spending at all.
Yep.
Even though like to another person it might be like, but you're just, sitting by yourself at whatever. And it's like, yeah, but it's still good. I don't mind
Yep.
it. It's just so different than I was expecting to feel a little bit more like, "Oh, this stinks," and now I'm just kinda like, "Oh, it's part of life." And,
Yep.
like, how quickly it changed.
Yes, I totally relate to that. Like with my husband coaching basketball, like I try to go to as many of the home games as I can. And I think at first I was like, oh my gosh, like this is one more thing that's on our schedule, and I want to go because I want to be supportive. But now it's like, oh, who am I going to see? Who do I get to like
Yeah,
that I'm not going to see super often? Or the one time where, some of the people that I usually sit with weren't there. I had the Kindle app on my phone, and at, halftime and at timeouts, I was like, oh, this is a good opportunity to read my
yeah,
book. Like if not, I wouldn't have had that. So it's just that the mindset shift that I think we can challenge ourselves, and sometimes changing our mindset is bold too because it feels
yeah.
hard, and it's really easy to get stuck on the same old pathways that we're used to. And so I just love that challenge of how can we take something that, yeah, on paper maybe seems like it's not that big and exciting or seems like a burden, but we can put this spin on it and make it something great, and it can be a moment for ourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we are getting close to time, and so I like to do some rapid fire questions. These are pretty simple, but
Okay.
the first one being, what is your beverage of choice?
Alright, well, I got an espresso in, like, November, and I am obsessed with it. So for coffee, it's gonna be their mint flavor, which is seasonal. Okay,
Okay.
mint is my favorite flavor in anything. I am always
Yep.
selecting mint. If I'm having a milkshake, mint. If I'm having any sort of treat, mint.
Okay.
I Carrie, not even kidding you, knowing that it was going out of season, I did the math to figure out how many mint coffees a week I'm likely to drink, and then based it on when it comes back in season in November, and then that's how many things I bought of mint coffee to make sure that I
That
could
is
get the best flavor.
fantastic.
So I would say that that is my number one non-alcoholic drink. My number one alcoholic drink then is either going to be an espresso martini, which I can only have one of because I don't want to be wired for like 4 days. Okay.
Yep.
So unless I have decaf, it's still only one, but it's a special thing. Otherwise, always champagne or prosecco.
Okay.
I come from a family that like we are a mimosa family. You know how you're a
Sure.
mimosa 5K
Yes.
family. Yep.
Yep.
So we're a
Absolutely.
mimosa, and it's just something that it's a given in my family is like if we get together we're celebrating that we're all here and everybody's happy and together, and I love that. So definitely a champagne would be my other
Okay. Those are both great options. And you did say that you have fine-tuned your espresso
option.
martini. So I
Like,
think we're
yeah,
going to need that recipe at some point.
yeah, I have done a little bit of work on it, and it's kind of like I'm pretty good at it, let's just say that. So
Okay, good to
yeah.
know.
Yep.
We kind of talked about this one a little bit, but what's your favorite way to unwind?
Right now I read a lot. I love to watch TV. So nothing that's like overly productive. My daughter and I are trying to get into chess.
Okay.
So hopefully a year from now I can say that. It's slow going. And then for Christmas, my son wanted to learn how to knit. And so
Cool.
I'm working on both of those hobbies with them as well. However, my
Okay.
son is really into he's obsessed with the idea of making socks, like sleep
Okay.
socks.
Sure.
Um, yeah, like that little angle. You think that's beginner level? Because I certainly don't think so.
No,
No.
I would have no idea how to do any
Yeah,
of that.
yeah. And
Sewing is
so,
not a skill I acquired.
no. So those are my hopeful things that
Okay.
I'm going to be doing in the next year, but more than likely, it's still going to be reading and watching TV.
There's nothing wrong with that, and love that you're trying that. It's great to try new hobbies. Maybe
Exactly.
it'll take off for them and you can stick to your books and TV
Yeah,
shows. It doesn't matter.
exactly. I would be fine with that too.
Amazing. I love to express gratitude. So what is something that you're grateful for today?
But Carrie, this is super cheesy, but I'm really grateful to have been able to chat with you. Like, this is nice
Hmm.
to just connect to somebody that we haven't chatted in a while, and it's nice to be able to do that. And it was a good conversation and really enjoyable. So thank you.
You are welcome, and I'm grateful that you're willing to share your story because it brings me so much joy. I know I'm going to be just energetic and hyped after this because it's so fulfilling to have these conversations. So,
For
thank you
sure.
for being here. And then, if you could eavesdrop on your friends talking about you, what would you want to hear them saying?
I think I would want to hear them saying that I just make situations more fun, like something
Mm,
along those lines. Because when I think about my role in different friendship groups, a lot of times I'm like the what are we going to do person. Like I like
okay.
to have some ideas to make sure everybody is having fun and a good time, and not meaning like we have to have a real big agenda, but like I did some research on these restaurants, or I know that this is a cool thing to do, and so I would like it to be one of those things where it just feels like when Kristen's with us, it really adds to the group.
Obviously I'm not a part of that friendship circle with you, but have been with you in many work situations, and I can say that that is very true. Remember one of the first times we were on a work call together, we were presenting, and you had pink hair, and I was like, this is the coolest person I have ever seen in my entire life. And you were so vibrant, and I was like, wow. If I could present like she can, like this whole work, and I'm pretty sure that's when we like started messaging each other and joked about a podcast at the time. So
Probably
I
like
can
that.
verify that for you.
Exactly. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Well, on a little bit more of a serious note, and to wrap us up today, what kind of legacy do you want to leave?
So I thought about this one a lot, and I appreciate you giving me the heads up on it because I would want my legacy to be that investing in others is the best way you can invest in yourself. And
Mm,
I think that like it shows in many different ways. So like at work, it's how do you build out a team? How do you empower others? How do we become successful as a group instead of just like one person having success at the because of others, right? Like, but
mm,
how do we all get elevated from that? So that's something that I'm just like a huge believer in. The whole idea of like, what is it? Rising tides raise all ships.
hmm.
I'm a huge believer in that. And I would also say like the investment in others is a way to invest in yourself. That goes through with just how I treat relationships. Like I try to be somebody that like I want to show up for you. Even if I'm not physically there, I want you to know that I care, that I
Mm,
want you to have success, and that thing you told me about 2 weeks ago, sometimes it is important to follow up on it. Even if it was just like a small thing, like I think that those are really crucial things to show people that you care about them. So
absolutely. Well, I think from our conversation today, I it's very apparent that you invest in others and just the things that you do show that you care. So I only have good things to say, and I know that you're already doing all the things to leave that legacy. So, with that, Kristen, thank you for being here. It was so fun to chat and just catch up and hear all about your story. I know people are really going to resonate with it. So, thanks for being a part of the podcast today.
thank you for having me, Carrie. This is so fun.
Yes. Well, thank you to all of our listeners. You can find us on Instagram at The Boldest You Pod. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends. And until next time, be bold, and we'll see you on the Boldest You podcast. Thanks, everyone.